Are you finished with your fairy tale, Bianca? Because the scent of your cheap lies is making me want to vomit. I stood in the headmaster's office, my lungs burning with a rage so hot it felt like molten lead. Beside me, my 3-year-old daughter, Daisy, was trembling. A jagged, angry red scratch tore across her cheek, her white collar stained with blood. "How dare you!" Bianca shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at me. "Marcus, look at her! She's unhinged! This is exactly why Leo had to defend himself." Defend himself? I stepped forward, my heels clicking like a firing squad. I lifted Daisy's chin, forcing them to see the wound. "He's 4, Marcus. He ripped into her skin because she wouldn't give him a toy. Look at her face and tell me again about defending himself." Marcus Thorne, my ex-husband, didn't even flinch. He adjusted his Rolex, his eyes cold and bored. "Eleanor, stop making a scene," Marcus said. "Kids are animals. I'll wire you $50,000 for the medical bills and your lost time. Take the money and leave before you embarrass yourself further." A dry, jagged laugh escaped my throat. "50,000? You think you can put a price tag on my daughter's pain? You think your pathetic money can wash away the fact that you raised a monster?" "It's more than you'll make in a year, honey," Bianca sneered. "Take the cash and buy some dignity, or at least a better suit." I turned to her, my eyes narrowing into lethal slits. "Dignity? You spent your 20s climbing onto the laps of married men until you finally caught a coward. Don't talk to me about dignity." "Marcus!" Bianca gasped, her face flushing crimson. "Enough!" Marcus snapped. "Eleanor, I am the primary donor here. If I say this was an accident, it was an accident. Who do you think is going to believe a broke single mother over me?" I walked right into his personal space, my voice vibrating with pure venom. "You made one fatal mistake, Marcus. You forgot I know which offshore accounts you used to fund your affair while we were still married. You want to talk about who people will believe?" Marcus's eyes flickered with sudden, sharp fear. "What do you want?" he growled. "I don't want your money. I want your son expelled. I want a written apology. And I want you to look your daughter in the eye and tell her she's worth more than a bribe." "You're dreaming," Bianca barked. "Get out!" "I'm leaving," I said, pulling out my phone and hitting play on a video file. It showed the attack in high def, recorded by Daisy's smartwatch. But if the expulsion paperwork isn't on my desk by morning, this video goes to the SEC and every news outlet in New York. I'll burn your IPO and this elite school to the ground. I grabbed Daisy's hand. I looked at Marcus, at the hollow man I once loved. "I used to wonder why I loved you," I said coldly. "Now I just wonder how I ever survived the stench of your soul. We're done talking. Now I'm taking everything." I turned on my heel and marched out. My heart was pounding, but for the first time in years, I felt like the hammer, not the nail. The glass doors of St. Jude's slammed behind me, the cold New York air biting at my face. I buckled Daisy into her car seat, my hands still vibrating with a lethal energy. "Mommy, are you sad?" Daisy whispered, her voice small, her eyes fixed on my reflection in the rearview mirror. "No, baby," I said, wiping a stray tear from her cheek. My voice was like tempered steel. "Mommy is just finishing a job. Close your eyes. We're going to see Uncle Dominic." As I pulled my black SUV into the frantic Manhattan traffic, my phone screamed. "Marcus." I ignored it. Then a text flashed. Don't be a fool, Elle. You can't win this. I'll make sure you never work in this city again. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. He still thought he owned the world. He still thought I was the silent housewife who cried in the kitchen while he cheated in boardrooms. I pulled up to the Vance Tower, a monolith of black glass that pierced the sky. This was the heart of the empire. I didn't need an appointment. The security guards saw my face and stepped aside. They knew me. They knew what I had done for their boss. Dominic Vance was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse office, a glass of neat scotch in his hand. He didn't turn around when I entered. "You're late, Eleanor," he said, his voice a deep, resonant rumble. "I had to handle a snake," I replied, dropping my bag on his $20,000 leather sofa. Dominic turned. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, immediately fell on Daisy's bandaged face. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He walked over, knelt in front of Daisy, and touched the edge of the bandage with a tenderness that contradicted his Ice King reputation. "Who did this?" he asked. His voice was quiet, the kind of quiet that precedes a hurricane. "Marcus's son, and Marcus tried to buy my silence with a 50-grand check," I said, pouring myself a drink. My hand didn't shake this time. "He threatened to blackball me. He thinks his IPO makes him untouchable." Dominic stood up, his towering frame casting a long shadow. "Marcus Thorne is a flea imagining he's a lion. He's forgotten who provided the capital for his first venture." "I don't want you to fight my battle, Dominic," I snapped, turning to face him. My eyes were burning. "I want the tools to finish him myself. I'm going to short his stock. I'm going to leak the offshore records. I'm going to erase him." Dominic looked at me, a rare, predatory smile tugging at his lips. "I've missed this side of you. The war room, Eleanor." Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. It wasn't Marcus. It was an unknown number. A photo of me and Dominic standing by the window, taken from a distance, followed by a message. "Nice upgrade, Elle. But even a king can't save a gold-digging whore once the world knows her secrets. Check the news." I turned on the TV mounted on the wall. A local gossip channel was already flashing a headline. "Scandal at St. Jude's. Is Eleanor Sterling using her daughter's accident to shake down the Thorne family?" They had moved faster than I thought. Bianca had played the victim card, spinning a tale of a bitter ex-wife attacking a pregnant woman and her innocent son. "She wants to play with fire," I hissed, the glass in my hand nearly cracking. "Fine, I'll give her an inferno." Dominic walked over and took the glass from my hand. "My legal team is already on standby. My PR firm is yours. What's your first move, Eleanor?" I looked at the screen, at the blurred photo of my daughter's face being used as clickbait. "Call my assistant," I said, my voice echoing with a cold, righteous fury. "Tell her to initiate the Red Cell protocol. We aren't just defending. We're going to dismantle Marcus Thorne, piece by agonizing piece." "Red Cell is active?" My assistant Connie crackled through the speakerphone. "But Eleanor, the narrative is spreading like a virus. Bianca just posted a tearful video on Instagram. She's claiming you physically assaulted her in the office while Leo watched in terror. The internet is eating it up." "Let them eat," I said, leaning over Dominic's desk, my eyes fixed on the live ticker of Thorne Industries. "The more they gorge on her lies, the harder they'll choke on the truth." Dominic sat back, watching me with a calculated intensity. "She's aiming for your throat, Eleanor. If the public labels you an abusive mother, you lose custody. Marcus knows that's the only way to truly break you." I slammed my palm onto the mahogany. "He won't get close. Marcus thinks he's playing chess, but he's playing with a ticking bomb." My phone vibrated. A call from Marcus. This time, I picked up. "Are you enjoying the show, Elle?" Marcus's voice was smug. dripping with the arrogance of a man who thought he'd already won. The board of St. Jude's just voted. Daisy is expelled for parental misconduct. You're finished. Take the $50,000. I'll even make it $100,000. And get out of New York before the CPS knocks on your door. You really are a pathetic little man, Marcus, I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. You think a few paid-off bloggers and a fake video from your trophy wife can stop me? You forgot I handled your crisis management for half a decade. I know where the bodies are buried because I'm the one who dug the graves. You have nothing, Marcus spat. I have the forensic audit of your 2023 tax returns, Marcus. The ones where you donated $6 million to a shell company in the Caymans that just happens to pay for Bianca's jewelry collection. If I hit send, the SEC will be at your penthouse before your morning latte. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence on the other end. You wouldn't, he hissed. Try me. I'm not the woman who loved you anymore. I'm the woman who's going to watch you drown and charge you for the water. Goodbye, Marcus. I hung up and turned to Dominic. I need the Vance Group's floor traders. I want to start the short sell at the opening bell tomorrow. We're going to drive Thorne Industries into the dirt. Dominic stood up, buttoning his blazer. Already done. But there's a complication. My father heard about the school incident. He thinks our alliance is becoming a liability for the Vance name. Is that a warning, Dominic? I asked, my eyes narrowing. Are you going to fold because your daddy is worried about some gossip? Dominic walked toward me, stopping only inches away. The air between us was thick with tension and something far more dangerous. He reached out, his thumb grazing my jawline. I don't fold, Eleanor. I raise. But my father has already arranged a meeting with the Thorne family to settle this. He wants a ceasefire. A ceasefire? I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Tell your father that I don't do ceasefires. I do total surrenders. Just then, the office door burst open. It was a security guard, looking panicked. Mr. Vance, there's a woman downstairs. She's screaming for Mrs. Sterling. She's got a camera crew with her. I looked at Dominic. A cold, predatory smile touched my lips. That'll be Bianca. She wants a scene? Fine. Let's give her a grand finale. I turned to the mirror, smoothing my hair and adjusting my blazer. I looked like a woman ready for a gala or a massacre. Daisy, stay with Connie, I said, kissing my daughter's forehead. Mommy has to go put a monster back in its cage. The lobby of Vance Tower was a circus. Bianca stood at the center, flanked by 2 bodyguards and a gaggle of hungry reporters. Her eyes were red-rimmed, a masterpiece of fake grief. I just want her to stop, Bianca wailed for the cameras. Eleanor is obsessed with Marcus. She's using that poor child to extort us. I fear for my life. I stepped out of the elevator, the sharp clack of my heels silencing the room. The cameras swiveled toward me like heat-seeking missiles. Dominic walked half a step behind me, his presence an immovable mountain of power. Eleanor, is it true you assaulted Bianca Thorne? A reporter yelled, thrusting a mic into my face. I didn't stop until I was 3 feet from Bianca. She flinched, her grief momentarily replaced by genuine terror. You've got a lot of nerve coming to my workplace with this low-budget performance, Bianca, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. But I suppose when your husband's bank accounts are about to be frozen, you have to find a new way to get paid. You're insane, Bianca hissed, her voice dropping so only I could hear. We own the school. We own the narrative. You're nothing but a bitter shadow. Is that so? I turned to the cameras, my face a mask of cold, righteous fury. Bianca Thorne has spent the last 4 hours painting me as an abuser. But let's look at the facts. Let's look at what St. Jude's tried to hide. I flicked a remote in my hand. The massive digital screens in the lobby, usually reserved for stock prices, suddenly flickered. A video began to play. It was crystal clear. It showed Leo Thorne pinning Daisy against a wall, screaming at her, and then deliberately raking his nails across her face. The lobby went deathly quiet. Then, the audio kicked in. The voice of Miss Miller, the teacher. "It's okay, Leo. Daisy shouldn't have touched your things. Don't tell your mom, okay?" "That video was recorded on my daughter's smartwatch," I stated, my voice cutting through the stunned silence. "And this?" I held up a tablet showing a bank transfer record. "Is a $50,000 donation Marcus Thorne made to the headmaster's personal account 10 minutes after the attack." Bianca's face went from pale to ghostly white. The reporters began shouting, their questions turning like a pack of wolves on her. "Bianca, did you know about the bribe? Is it true your son has a history of violence?" This is a fabrication," Bianca stammered, backing away. "The only thing fabricated here is your marriage," I snapped, stepping into her space. "Go home, Bianca. Tell Marcus the SEC just received the offshore files. And tell him that Eleanor Sterling doesn't take bribes, she takes souls." Dominic stepped forward, his hand resting firmly on the small of my back. "Security, escort these people out. The Vance Group does not tolerate theater." As the guards cleared the lobby, Bianca was swarmed by the very reporters she had invited. She looked small, panicked, and utterly defeated. Once the room was empty, Dominic looked down at me. "You didn't just defend yourself, Eleanor. You incinerated them." "That was just the appetizer, Dominic," I said, my heart still racing with adrenaline. "Marcus still thinks he can save his IPO. He's currently in a meeting with your father, isn't he?" Dominic nodded, his expression darkening. "In the private dining room at the Pierre Hotel. My father is offering him a buyout to make this disappear." "Then let's go," I said, grabbing my coat. "I'd hate for them to reach an agreement without the guest of honor." The private dining room at the Pierre Hotel was a fortress of mahogany and hushed secrets. Arthur Vance, the patriarch of the Vance Empire, sat at the head of the table like a king on a fading throne. Opposite him was Marcus, looking ragged, his eyes bloodshot, clutching a glass of scotch as if it were a lifebuoy. The heavy oak doors didn't just open. They hit the wall with a crack as I marched in. Dominic was a shadow at my shoulder, his presence a silent promise of violence. "Eleanor? What is the meaning of this?" Arthur barked, his voice vibrating with old money authority. "This is a private negotiation to settle a delicate matter. Dominic, I told you to keep your associate contained. This is no place for a domestic dispute." "I am not an associate to be contained, Arthur," I said, my voice cutting through the cigar smoke like a blade. I didn't wait for an invitation. I pulled out a chair directly across from Marcus and sat, my spine as straight as a spear. And I don't recall giving anyone permission to negotiate the price of my daughter's blood. Marcus slammed his glass onto the table, the liquid splashing onto the silk cloth. "You've gone too far, Eleanor. That stunt in the lobby, I'll sue you for defamation. I'll have you thrown in a cell for extortion." "With what lawyers, Marcus?" I leaned forward, the gold light of the chandelier reflecting in my eyes. "Your primary underwriters pulled out 20 minutes ago. The SEC has officially opened an inquiry into your offshore charities. By the time the sun rises, Thorne Industries will be a hollow shell, and you'll be a pariah." Arthur Vance cleared his throat, his gaze freezing into ice. "Ms. Sterling, I was prepared to offer Mr. Thorne a quiet exit to protect the Vance Group's interests. Your personal vendetta is causing unnecessary volatility in the market. We take care of our own. You are making this messy. Personal? I laughed, a sharp, dangerous sound that echoed off the high ceiling. Arthur, you think this is about a bitter ex-wife? You're smarter than that. Or maybe you're just getting old. Watch your tongue, Arthur hissed. No, you watch your back, I snapped, sliding a thick folder across the table. It landed with a heavy thud in front of the old man. 3 years ago, Marcus didn't just leave me. He made a deal with your brother, Robert. He provided the insider data Robert used to try and oust you from the board. He was the mole, Arthur. He traded your legacy for a promise of a seat at a table he wasn't fit to sit at. The room went deathly silent. The only sound was the ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. Arthur's eyes shifted slowly, agonizingly, toward Marcus. Marcus looked like a man standing on a trap door. Sweat soaked through his bespoke shirt, his mouth hanging open. She's lying, Arthur. She's a desperate woman trying to claw her way back into a world that rejected her. I don't lie about business, Marcus. That's your department, I said, my voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm whisper. Check the logs, Arthur. Page 12. Encrypted emails from Marcus's private server to Robert's offshore accounts. He didn't just betray me. He stabbed you in the back while you were crowning him a rising star. Arthur flipped through the pages, his jaw tightening until the muscle pulsed in his cheek. He looked at the files, then at the trembling wreck of a man across from him. The disgust on Arthur's face was more devastating than any physical blow. He stood up slowly, the chair screeching against the floor. The deal is off, Arthur said, his voice a low, vibrating rumble of fury. He didn't even look at Marcus. He turned to me, a flicker of something like respect or fear crossing his face. Ms. Sterling, it seems I underestimated the depth of your utility. Dominic, ensure the Vance Group is fully insulated. When the SEC moves in, I want Marcus Thorne left out in the cold. Arthur, wait! Please! Marcus scrambled to his feet, but Arthur walked out without a backward glance. Marcus collapsed back into his chair, his eyes hollow, staring at the empty seat. Why, Elle? We had a life. We were going to be the most powerful couple in New York. No, Marcus, I said, standing up and looking down at the man who had once been my whole world. You were going to be a king. I was going to be your trophy. Today, I'm finally waking up. And you? You're going to find out what it's like to live in the dirt. I turned to Dominic, who was watching me with an unreadable expression. Let's go. This room smells like a corpse. The night was a cold, shimmering blanket over Manhattan as we left the pier. Dominic's black sedan moved through the city like a predatory shark. Inside, the silence was heavy, charged with the aftershocks of the massacre I had just orchestrated. You're remarkably quiet for someone who just decapitated a king, Dominic said, his eyes fixed on the neon-streaked window. I'm not quiet, I replied, leaning my head against the cool leather. I'm calculating. Marcus is a cornered rat now, and rats are most dangerous when they have nothing left to lose but their pride. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I opened it, and my breath hitched. It was a photo of Daisy sleeping in her bed, taken through the window of my apartment. The caption was simple. Every empire has a weak point, Eleanor. Sleep tight. Dominic, stop the car, I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. What is it? He saw the phone, and his face instantly transformed into a mask of iron. He grabbed his radio. Bravo team, move to the Sterling residence now. Full tactical. Secure the perimeter. If anyone is within a block of that building, neutralize them. He wouldn't, I gasped, the cold fury in my gut turning into a sickening dread. Marcus is a coward, not a criminal. A coward with his back against the wall is capable of anything, Dominic growled, especially if Bianca is whispering in his ear. We screeched to a halt in front of my building 10 minutes later. I didn't wait for the door to open. I was out and running before the car had fully stopped. My heels clattered on the pavement as I burst through the lobby, past the startled doorman and into the elevator. I burst into my apartment, my lungs screaming for air. Daisy! Connie! The living room was dark. I threw open the bedroom door. Connie, my assistant, was sitting in a chair by the window, her face pale. Daisy was fast asleep, her chest rising and falling in a peaceful rhythm, oblivious to the war being fought over her head. Eleanor, what's happening? Connie whispered, standing up. Security guards just swarmed the hallway. They're here to help, I said, collapsing onto the edge of Daisy's bed. I touched her hair, my hand shaking uncontrollably. The rage I had felt all day was suddenly eclipsed by a paralyzing fear. Dominic walked in, his phone to his ear. Trace it. I don't care about the privacy laws. I want the location of that burner phone 5 minutes ago. He looked at me, his eyes dark with a protective fire. She's safe, Elle. I've put a 24-hour detail on this floor. This isn't enough, I said, standing up, my voice trembling but gaining strength. Marcus thinks he can scare me? He thinks he can use my daughter to make me blink? I walked to my desk and opened my laptop. My fingers flew across the keys. What are you doing? Dominic asked. I was going to let the SEC take him down slowly. I hissed, the red cell protocol flashing on my screen. I was going to let him keep his freedom while he lived in poverty, but he threatened my child. Now I don't want him broke. I want him in a cage. Eleanor, wait, Dominic said, stepping toward me. If you leak the classified bank files now, you might be implicated in the data theft. Let my legal team handle the gray areas. The air in my apartment was thick with the hum of high-powered servers and the cold, clinical glow of 3 computer monitors. It was 2 a.m. Dominic sat at the dining table, his tie loosened, his eyes fixed on a tablet as he coordinated with his Black Ops legal team. We have the wire transfer logs, Dominic said, his voice a low vibration in the quiet room. Bianca's sister didn't just give us the tax records. She gave us the login credentials for the Shadowthorn server. It's all there, Eleanor. The payoffs, the offshore accounts, and the payments to the private investigator who took that photo of Daisy. I felt a chill of pure, icy satisfaction. The PI is the key. Threatening a minor is a felony. Combined with the financial fraud, Marcus isn't looking at a fine anymore. He's looking at 20 years in a federal penitentiary. I've already alerted the district attorney's office, Dominic added, his gaze turning to me. They've been building a case against Thorne for months. Our data is the nail in the coffin. They're moving tonight. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. Not a text, but a FaceTime call. Marcus. I looked at Dominic. He nodded. I swiped to answer, propping the phone up on the desk. Marcus's face appeared, but the arrogant titan was gone. He was sitting in the back of a dark car, his hair disheveled, his eyes wide with a manic, flickering desperation. You think you're so smart, don't you, Elle? He rasped. Behind him, I could see the blurry lights of the Lincoln Tunnel. He was running. You think you can just take everything I built and walk away with the billionaire's son? You didn't build it, Marcus. You stole it, I said, my voice as flat and sharp as a scalpel. And you made the mistake of thinking I was part of the furniture. Where are you going? The Hamptons? Or are you trying for Teterboro Airport? He let out a jagged, hysterical laugh. I'm going where you can't touch me. But before I go, I wanted you to know one thing. I'm the one who called Child Protective Services. I told them you're unstable. I told them about your relationship with Vance and how you use Daisy as a pawn. They'll be at your door in an hour. My blood turned to ice, but I didn't let my expression flicker. You're late, Marcus. The DA is already at your penthouse, and since you aren't there, they've issued an all-points bulletin for your arrest. You aren't a father making a report. You're a fugitive fleeing a grand jury. Marcus's face contorted with rage. You bitch! You've ruined me. I gave you everything. You gave me a reason to hate you, I hissed, leaning into the camera. And you gave me the strength to destroy you. Look out the back window, Marcus. In the background of the call, blue and red lights suddenly exploded into the frame. The wail of sirens muffled his voice. What? No! Marcus screamed. The phone tumbled, the camera showing a chaotic view of the car's interior as it screeched to a halt. I heard the muffled shouts of, Police! Get out of the vehicle with your hands up! I didn't wait for him to be handcuffed. I ended the call. The silence that followed was deafening. I slumped back into my chair, the adrenaline leaving my body in a sickening wave. It was over. The man who had haunted my dreams and threatened my daughter was being hauled away in steel cuffs. Dominic stood up and walked over to me, placing a steadying hand on my shoulder. He's gone, Eleanor. The CPS report will be dismissed as a retaliatory strike by a criminal. You won. I didn't just want to win, Dominic, I whispered, looking at the door to the room where Daisy was safely dreaming. I wanted him to know he could never, ever touch her again. He knows, Dominic said, his voice softening. The whole world knows now. But as I looked at the case closed file on my screen, I knew there was one more piece of the puzzle. Bianca. She hadn't been in the car, and a wounded animal like Bianca didn't go into the night quietly. The news of Marcus's arrest hit the 4 a.m. cycle like a lightning strike. Every screen in the city showed the grainy footage of the tech titan being shoved into the back of a cruiser in the Lincoln Tunnel. But while the world watched Marcus fall, I was watching the surveillance feed of a small private airfield in New Jersey. She's there, I said, pointing to a slim figure in a hooded trench coat pacing nervously near a Gulfstream jet. Bianca. Dominic leaned in, his jaw tight. She's trying to flee with the remaining liquid assets. She emptied Marcus's personal safe an hour ago, almost $3 million in cash and untraceable jewelry. She's leaving Leo, I whispered, a cold chill running down my spine. She's abandoning her own son to save herself. That's the difference between a mother and a predator, Eleanor, Dominic said, picking up his phone. Do you want the police to take her, or do you want to finish this? I grabbed my coat. I want her to see my face before she disappears into a cage. The drive to the airfield was a blur of speed and shadow. By the time we arrived, the jet's engines were already whining, a high-pitched scream in the pre-dawn gray. I stepped out of the car just as Bianca was climbing the stairs. Running so soon, Bianca? You didn't even say goodbye to your perfect son, I shouted over the roar of the engines. Bianca froze. She turned, her face a mask of pure, ugly hatred. The polished trophy wife was gone. In her place was a cornered street fighter. You think you've won, Eleanor? She shrieked, clutching a heavy designer bag to her chest. Marcus is a loser. I was the one who kept him relevant. I'll be out of the country before the sun is up, and I'll be living like a queen while you're still scrubbing the floors of Manhattan. You aren't going anywhere, I said, walking toward her, my voice amplified by the cold wind. I didn't just track your car, Bianca. I tracked the wire transfers you made to your sister. She didn't just give us Marcus's files. She gave us yours. The embezzlement, the identity theft. It's all in the hands of the FBI. Bianca's eyes widened. She lunged for the jet door, but the pilot, a man Dominic had convinced to cooperate, stepped out and blocked her path. The flight plan has been canceled, Mrs. Thorne, the pilot said coldly. No! I have money! I'll pay you double! Bianca screamed, throwing her bag at him. Hundreds of $100 bills spilled out, fluttering across the wet tarmac like dead leaves. I stood there, watching the money, the thing she had sold her soul for, being trampled by the wind. You called me a nothing 3 years ago, I said, stopping at the foot of the stairs. You told me I didn't belong in your world. You were right. I don't belong in a world built on lies and stolen blood. But you belong exactly where you're going. Blue lights flooded the airfield. 4 black SUVs screeched to a halt, and federal agents swarmed the plane. Bianca Thorne, you are under arrest for conspiracy, embezzlement, and child endangerment, an agent shouted. As the cuffs clicked around her wrists, Bianca let out a harrowing, animalistic scream. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a venomous rage. I'll kill you. I'll find a way to destroy you if it's the last thing I do. You already did the last thing you'll ever do, Bianca, I said, my voice barely a whisper. You lost. As they led her away, Dominic walked up beside me. He didn't say anything, but his presence was a warm anchor in the freezing morning. The sun began to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and gold. It's over, Eleanor, he said. Almost, I replied, looking at the mountain of cash on the ground. There's still one more thing I need to do for Daisy. I need to make sure the school that turned its back on her never does it to another child. The board meeting is at 9 a.m., Dominic said, a smirk touching his lips. I believe I just bought a controlling interest in the land the school sits on. Shall we go evict some hypocrites? The boardroom of St. Jude's elite was a sanctuary of stained glass and arrogance. At 9 a.m., the board members sat in high-backed chairs, their faces pale as they stared at the morning headlines. The headmaster, Mr. Miller, was at the head of the table, frantically wiping sweat from his brow. The doors didn't just open. They were thrown wide by Dominic's security. I walked in, not as a pleading mother, but as the new landlord. This meeting is closed to outsiders, Miller stammered, his voice cracking. Then it's a good thing I'm not an outsider, I said, tossing a legal binder onto the table. I am the representative of Sterling Vance Holdings. As of 8 a.m., we have acquired the debt on this building and the land it occupies. In simpler terms, Miller, you're sitting in my chair. The board members gasped, murmuring in a panic. You can't do this, one woman sputtered. This is a prestigious institution with a 100-year history. A history you flushed down the toilet the moment you accepted a bribe to hide the assault of a 3-year-old, I snapped, leaning over the table. My eyes were cold fire. I've seen the internal memos. You all knew. You chose Marcus Thorne's donations over a child's safety. We were protecting the school's reputation, Miller cried. No, I hissed, leaning in until I could see the terror in his pupils. You were protecting your bonuses, but the elite era of St. Jude's is over. As the primary creditor, I am calling in the loans immediately. This school is insolvent. You're closing the school? The woman asked, horrified. I'm cleaning it, I corrected. Mr. Miller, you are fired. Effective immediately. No severance, no references. If you aren't out of this building in 10 minutes, I'll have you removed for trespassing. The same goes for any board member who voted to suppress the video of my daughter. Dominic stepped forward, his presence a dark, crushing weight in the room. My legal team is already filing a class action lawsuit on behalf of all the families whose incidents were hushed by this board. We have the records. We have the names. One by one, the board members stood up, their faces etched with the realization that their ivory tower had crumbled. Miller looked like a broken man, his hands trembling as he gathered his belongings. You're a monster, Eleanor, he whispered as he passed me. No, I replied, my voice echoing in the hollow room. I'm the mother you should have listened to. As the room emptied, leaving only me and Dominic, the silence felt clean. I walked over to the window, looking out at the playground where Daisy had been hurt. What now? Dominic asked, standing behind me. You've dismantled the Thorn Empire. You've purged the school. The world is waiting for your next move. Now I make sure this never happens again, I said, turning to him. I'm not closing the school, Dominic. I'm turning it into a foundation, a place where merit and safety matter more than the size of a father's checkbook, and I'm going to run it. Dominic smiled, a genuine, warm expression that reached his eyes. The head mistress of iron. I like the sound of that. My phone buzzed. It was a call from the prison, a restricted collect call. I answered it. Eleanor. Marcus's voice rasped. He sounded old, defeated, stripped of his power. Please, you have to help me. They're taking everything. The house, the cars. Leo has nowhere to go. Bianca's family won't take him. I felt a momentary tug of pity for the child, but for Marcus, I felt nothing but ice. Leo will go to his grandmother's, I said coldly, and he will get the therapy and discipline you were too arrogant to provide. As for you, Marcus, don't call this number again. You aren't a father. You aren't a husband. You're just a case number now. I hung up and looked at Dominic. One chapter is closed. I'm ready to start the next. Then let's go home, he said, offering his arm. Daisy is waiting. 6 months had passed since the night the sky fell on Marcus Thorne. In the relentless cycle of Manhattan's elite, his name had been scrubbed from the social registers and the glass and steel towers like a persistent, oily stain. Thorne Industries was a rotting carcass, picked clean by federal liquidators and vengeful creditors. The man who once thought he owned the air people breathed was now just a number in a federal holding cell, waiting for the gates of a penitentiary to swallow him whole. I stood on the expansive terrace of my new executive suite at the Sterling Vance Academy. Below me, the sprawling private park was alive with the sound of children playing. Genuine, boisterous laughter that wasn't stifled by the rigid, suffocating expectations of the old elite. There were no stone-faced bodyguards patrolling the perimeter anymore. Instead, I had installed a state-of-the-art security system designed to protect lives, not to intimidate them. Mommy, look at me, I'm winning! Daisy sprinted across the lush green lawn, her face glowing with a vitality I once feared was lost forever. The jagged scratch on her cheek had faded into a faint, silvery line, a badge of honor rather than a mark of shame. She held up a finger painting of a sun so bright it seemed to radiate its own heat. She looked radiant. She looked invincible. It's a masterpiece, baby! I called down, my voice catching for a second. The lump in my throat wasn't from sadness. It was from the sheer, overwhelming weight of victory. A familiar shadow lengthened across my mahogany desk. Dominic Vance was leaning against the doorframe, his suit jacket discarded and his sleeves rolled up. He held a bottle of vintage Krug in one hand and 2 crystal flutes in the other. He had traded his boardroom armor for a more relaxed look, but that predatory, protective glint in his eyes hadn't faded one bit. "The final audit just cleared," he said, his voice a low, resonant rumble that vibrated through the quiet room. He stepped inside, the scent of expensive sandalwood and cold rain following him. He began to pour the golden, effervescent liquid. "The Sterling Vance Foundation is now fully endowed for the next 50 years. You didn't just win a legal battle, Eleanor. You built a fortress. This school will be your legacy long after the names Thorne and Vance are footnotes in a history book." I accepted the glass, the tiny bubbles dancing against my skin like a celebration. "I didn't do it for the legacy, Dominic. I didn't even do it for the revenge, though God knows it tasted sweet. I did it so that no other woman in this city has to choose between her dignity and her child's safety. I did it to prove that the little people can bite back." "And Marcus?" Dominic asked, his gaze narrowing as he watched my expression. "Sentenced this morning," I replied, my voice as steady as a surgeon's hand. 15 years. No possibility of parole. The judge didn't hold back, especially after the evidence of the PI stalking Daisy came to light. Bianca took a plea deal for 8 years for her role in the embezzlement and money laundering. She's currently trademarking her prison chic look, I'm sure. They are exactly where they belong, in a world where their last name means absolutely nothing, and their money can't buy them a single minute of peace. Dominic walked over to the edge of the terrace, standing close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his frame. "So, is the fire out? Are you finally satisfied? Or is there another empire you need to dismantle?" I looked out at the New York skyline. The same skyline that had once felt like a cage closing in on me. I wasn't the broken divorcee with shaking hands anymore. I wasn't the desperate mother begging for a scrap of justice from a corrupt headmaster. I owned the table now, and I had set the menu. "The fire isn't out, Dominic," I said, turning to him with a sharp, lethal smile that had been forged in the white-hot heat of betrayal. "It's just controlled. I've realized that being a good girl nearly cost me my life and my daughter. But being a powerful woman? That saved my soul. I'm not done. I'm just getting started." Dominic raised his glass in a silent, respectful toast. "To the Iron Queen. To the woman who burned it all down to build a world worth living in," I corrected, clinking my glass against his. The sound of the crystal echoed in the air as the sun began to dip below the Hudson River, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and burning gold. I had lost a husband, a home, and a life I thought I needed. But in the ashes of that destruction, I had forged a version of myself that was truly, finally, unbreakable. I looked down at Daisy one last time before stepping back inside. She was fierce. She was free. And because I had the courage to be the monster they feared, she would never have to be anything but a child. The world had tried to crush me. It failed. Instead, it gave me the crown, and I had no intention of ever taking it off. Life's tough, but don't be a doormat. Stop waiting for a hero and start being your own. The best revenge is building a life they can't touch. Thanks for listening. If you loved Eleanor's comeback, hit like, drop a comment, and follow for more stories. See you in the next one.